So let me get back to Creole as part of a multi-day advocacy effort to bring up-to-date information and analysis from community and civic leaders in Haiti. This public briefing aims to educate and empower scholars, activists, journalists, aid practitioners, and policymakers. Even before the assassination of President Jovenel Moïse, organizations in Haiti engaged the process of reconciliation and dialogue in an attempt to assert Haitian people as the center of debates in reimagining the country and offering a democratic transition that would be diverse and inclusive. The July 7th assassination laid bare both the importance and fragility of this effort. A public briefing held 2 weeks later brought up the continuities of misrule and domination by some elite interests, both foreign and national. As the case for popular sovereignty slowly gained traction in the weeks that followed, two earthquakes as powerful as that in 2010 struck the south of Haiti on August the 14th. Outside Haiti, the public conversation either fused these crises in exceptionalist terms that denigrate the world's first free black republic or portrayed them as discrete, mutually unintelligible crises that are disconnected from foreign intervention. The aid response is a small fraction of that in 2010, and aid agencies, policymaking, and media agencies have expressed the need to do better and apply the lessons learned. Unfortunately, another humanitarian crisis immediately followed with violence against and forced removal of thousands of Haitian people seeking asylum in the US in mid September. This panel offers a number of analyses up to date from a diverse group of leaders on the ground, including the earthquake impacted areas on the US Mexico border, that explores the common roots of these seemingly separate events, including the international community's role in the problems. The panel asks hard questions about how to balance the need for a Haitian solution with the still quite urgent need for international assistance. We invited four panelists that confirmed their presence. Angeline Anastasius from ActionAid, Jean-Claude Aristide from Radio Haiti Égalité in the city of Okai, Gerline Joseph from the Haitian Bridge Alliance, and Jacques Ted Saint-Dic from the Commission in Search of a Haitian Solution to the Crisis. We have two other people that could have been here, but because of the violent situation in the streets of Port-au-Prince, we have Angeline Anastasius, Director of ActionAid in Haiti. She started working with ActionAid in 2015 and worked for 3 years straight as program officer, and as program coordinator. Angeline is a devoted woman that has engaged in social justice activism. The social justice in Haiti, which is disintegrating, is a factor that has affected the situation in Haiti and has not allowed them to reach justice. Angeline is studying a PhD in business management and has a license of ecology from the University of Maine. She has also a degree in administration from a college in Venezuela. She speaks English, French, and Spanish. Those that are with us today are Gerline Joseph, which is a co-founder and executive director of the Haitian Bridge Aligned and Black Innovative Fund. She works directly with the situation in the Texas Mexican border. We are asking those who are present here today. First, we'd like to thank you for your time. We know you're very busy with the crisis in Haiti. But our first question would be to you, to please offer a short summary of the evolution of the situation after the assassination, the transition, the earthquake, or the massive expulsions at the border. For just 2 or 3 minutes, can you give us a summary of the situation? And we'll start with Angeline. Thank you, Mark. Good evening, everybody. It's a pleasure for me to participate in this panel with you. I would like to greet all the panelists and all the participants that are following online. To answer your question, we can say that the year 2021, from the beginning, had known a continuity of our popular um, activism, and the population kept requesting the departure of President Jovenel Moïse and showed its disagreement with two of the major projects that President Moïse had, which was to organize elections and a constitutional modification referendum. And so the continuity of the struggle of the people against social inequalities, against the system in place, against foreign meddling in the internal affairs of the country, against violation of human rights, and certainly against the generalized insecurity situation in the country. We have a situation where there are a lot of kidnappings and a lot of violence against women and small children. The country today is suffering from a gangsterization, which is affecting our constitution. And we, regarding all this situation, we see and we understand the situation and the migratory crisis that we are seeing today in Haiti. The migration crisis is linked to all that I've just said, but it is also linked, at least in the last 10 years, with the social economic conditions that have not improved, extreme poverty, uh, jobless, and impoverishment of the middle class and the destruction of our country agricultural class. Today, over 60% of our population is living with less than $2 a day. And so the vast majority of our population has no access to basic services such as education and health. The information available shows that 4.4 million Haitians, or 40% of the population, is living in under food insecurity. And the migration crisis is really a result of systemic problems, structural problems, deep problems that the country has never been able to address during the past 10 years. We should also take a look at other aspects such as natural catastrophes, the 2010 earthquake and the Hurricane Matthew, for example, caused economic destruction for more than 9 million US dollars. The economic destruction of the earthquake of the past August the 14th is estimated at 8 and some million US dollars, while in the last 3 years, there has been no economic growth. And so for the last year, there's been no economic growth. And the projections for this year, according to our central bank, is also a negative economic growth situation. So in this context, our brothers and sisters are being deported from other countries where they are looking for better lives, and specifically in the United States. Information published by IOM between October 10th and that IOM published on October the 10th shows that over 10 million Haitians have been deported from the United States, from Mexico, from the Bahamas, and amongst them there are 25% of women and 17% of children. The group of support to Haitian refugees, the GA, has counted over 17,000 Haitians deported from the Dominican Republic. Some have voluntarily returned, but others, more over 2,500, have been deported by force, expulsed. So there are more or less, we can say between September and October the 10th, 40,000 Haitians that have returned to their country, while the country doesn't even have a plan of reintegration for them. The basic social services are basically non-existent. security situation is worsening and it's a real catastrophe, a real economic catastrophe and shock, a psychological shock for these people and their families who have to receive them. So, in a summary, that's what I could say to enlighten the context of today's situation. Thank you. Thank you very much, Angeline. Gerline, can you give us a little summary of the situation on the ground? Thank you very much, Mark. And I would like to say hello, honor, and respect to everybody who is here today on this very important panel. Thank you very much for this meeting. I do not have much to say, and I do not want to speak in details too much. But what I can say is that most of what we're living today in Haiti is a result of the policy that Americans have imposed on our country. And we know that since our independence, it's non-acceptable, unacceptable fact coming from the international community, and they are the we are the ones who are continuously paying as a country and paying as a nation. We want to stress that the United States has started and have clearly shown that they are against Haitians that have left Haitians for several years. We have the case of Haitian migrants having to leave the country back during the Duvalier dictatorship, of people having to go to Venezuela. Brazil invited Haitian migrants to come over because they needed people to work, and they needed labor for the World Cup and other uh, things that they had that needed labor. So Chile had also opened its doors, but there has come a time now in the world where our migrants are not welcome anymore, and because of that, it's causing lots of difficulties, lots of racism in these communities. I'm sorry, the panelist sound is cutting out, and against the people that have had to leave their countries to look for a better life in other countries. The interpreter apologized. We have lost the connection with the panelists. We have lost the connection with the panelist. We apologize. We're trying to get her back. It seems that we have lost her. While we're waiting for her, we could maybe go back to hello, Mark, can you hear me? Yes, we can hear you. Yes, so what we see today is the result of uh, bad management in the country and bad management by our local governments and local violence, internal violence in the country that has turned life into an impossible adventure, and external violence to coming from the international community, which is trying to impose conditions that are really impossible for us Haitians to stay in our country. As Angeline mentioned before, but even today with the lockdown that we're experiencing, there are other panelists that were supposed to participate today, but that cannot even be here because of a country lockdown, because of the insecurity context that forces us to not be able to participate. So this is the result. And today, as we're speaking, there are approximately 8,000 people that have already been deported from the United States. People, some of those who were under the bridge in Texas, and I was there with them. And we are working still to see how we could uh, achieve a certain protection for the migrants that are getting to the Mexico-US border. And we will share documentation with you so you can see how we're still fighting and still struggling with the US and the Mexican government and the Haitian government to show that it's not possible to accept or to participate in this violence inside our country and in this violence outside the country that is targeting us. Thank you very much, Gerlin. In Haiti, people try to make a difference between uh, structural crisis and con- contextual crisis. How do you define contextual and structural crisis? What's the difference? Who would like to answer first? Ashley?
Okay, merci, Mark.
All right.
Bon,
Sure. Thank you,
moi,
Mark.
genyen
In my
efektivman yon
opinion,
diferans
there is indeed a
kriz
difference between
konjonkturel avèk
uh,
kriz strukturel yo.
contextual crisis and a
Donk,
structural
nan yon
crisis.
peyi tankou
Well,
Haiti,
in a
nou
country
gen
such as
kriz
Haiti, where
strukturel,
there is
lè nou
permanently
gen dwa
a
pale
structural
de
crisis, some
santé,
people might not
problem
make the
strukturel yo
difference
definitely
because the
important.
structural
Et c'est
problems
ça,
have an
repons ke
impact
sa kriz
on
yo talye bay
the
lè nou pale
management or
problem
the responses
konjonkturel.
or the solutions that we should be bringing to a contextual crisis. And to illustrate my purpose, I can give you a couple of examples. And the first example would be, for example, concerning the assassination of President Jovenel Moïse on July the 7th in his house. This is certainly a contextual crisis where the population is expecting for a solution and that justice be rendered. But yet, what we see today, since the assassination of the president to this day, it is practically impossible to see a progress in this issue because, first of all, our police institution has been instrumentalized and politicized, cannot achieve its work in full independence. We also have a judicial system that suffers from the same ailments that um, where the executive branch is interfering and where the executive branch is interfering, as we said, but also where the labor work conditions and security conditions are not fulfilled. There are also structural problems with the judges, for example, which are key elements to the judicial system, but are in strike, have been in strike for the last 2 days to request improvements in their work conditions, greater security, and to allow them to work in peace and in security. So, in the middle of this type of situations, which are really structural problems, we cannot bring a response to a contextual crisis, and we cannot make a difference really anymore between a contextual and a structural crisis because the institutions and the structures were not in place in the first place. So this is really the problem. But in reality, there are contextual problems and structural problems, and if there is an establishment, a system that is in place and can address the situations, uh, it would be very different situations. That's what I could say. I don't know if I would like to add something else a little later, maybe. Thank you, Angeline. It's very important to remember. Gerlin, can you make a difference between contextual and structural crisis? Can you tell us how the situation is in the border and what part of it is a contextual crisis and what part is a structural crisis?
Elle est, elle n'est pas là.
Bon,
It seems we have lost her.
continuer parce que
Well, let me continue then.
effectivement nous
Uh,
pas comprendre
Another example that
cette
we
crise
could
migratoire
use
là que
is
c'est
the migration
civic
crisis.
et
As I just
sociétal
explained
après tout
already,
ça soit n'a vivre là c'est quand
The migration crisis that we are seeing is directly linked to social inequalities, for example. It is directly linked to lack of access to basic social services that are lacking in the country. We are living in a country where we lack everything. And so policies do not allow for the middle class to be reinforced, do not allow for the countryside peasant class to be reinforced and to address the problems in the country in a way that all Haitians, women and men and women in the country have equal opportunity. And on top of all of that, we have an insecurity problem that is worsening. So it is not fringe insecurities. There's really a large movement that is blocking the eastern area and the Port-au-Prince area and causing great difficulties and disrupting the economic exchanges and transfers between different parts of the country. So nowadays, the migration crisis is linked to structural problems that need to be addressed, and it is really urgent. They cannot wait. And today, uh, every country in the Caribbean practically and in the Americas in general um, are chasing us away everywhere we go to look for a better life. Countries that are improving and that are emerging economically, but that still do not have enough means to take charge for this mass of migrants, whether Haitians or others that are uh, getting in their countries. If we take the United States as an example, and if I like to make just a little detour on this issue. I think the United States is being very selective because um, the United States has granted a TPS that allowed everybody who had entered the country before, after 2010, to stay in the country. And these people are nowadays already integrated in the American system. They speak the language, they found jobs, and they are not really the issue here. But um, in Haiti, in a moment where the United States, given the COVID-19 pandemic and everything, does not necessarily need cheap labor. It's not in their interest. But um, after the assassination of President Jovenel Moïse, the United States allowed and granted another TPS, and this time it was in a time of holidays and where the brains and the intellectuals of our countries were abroad, and so given this TPS status is really a policy that favors brain drain, intellectual drain, Haitian intellectual drain from Haiti, and while they are returning those that they don't need really. And so we should take several parameters into consideration to analyze this crisis, which is a very serious crisis. And I effectively agree with Darlene. The result of what we're seeing today is not just a Haitian problem, it is a shared responsibility where the United States plays a key role in our situation today, particularly in the international community and those that are part of the core group specifically. Let's talk about the core group.
Hello, Galen?
Hello, Galen.
Oui, nous écoutons.
Yes, we can hear you. I'm sorry, I have internet problems.
Bon, et si vous annulez vidéo, peut-être soit capable de clair.
If you turn off your video, maybe we could hear you better, or maybe you could call us over the phone. Okay, we can keep going. I'll try to do just that. Okay, so if you can hear us, how is the situation on the border an expression of the structural crisis that exists in Haiti? Yes, the situation on the border is a result is a result of the structural crisis. Um, and every other problem, every other crisis that we are having in Haiti, there are structural crises, there are hard crises, there are mental crises, there are economic crises, all types of crises, really. And we can see that the result is uh, exactly under the bridge in the US, under the bridge in Mexico, where they are deporting people from different countries and where Haitians have to cross 10 countries and 10 borders to get there because of a structural crisis that we are facing. And as a consequence, also of the people in charge of Haiti, the actions of people in charge uh, of the country's regress. I was about to say progress, but it's not a progress, it's a regress because day after day we are really taking steps back. And so it's very important. And one of um, as a consequences and as and for people who understand and who would like to see a better life for Haiti, Haitians in Haiti and outside of Haiti, we have we enjoy no respect, unfortunately, because of the structural crisis. We do not enjoy value in any of the countries where we migrate to. And when we consider what Haiti represents, Haiti is one of the founding countries of respect in the world. One of is a founder of freedom is in the world is was and Haiti was founded to show and get respect from the world. And so this crisis that we're facing is really echoing in the whole wide world because we have to expel our brothers and sisters to other countries in search of better lives with no respect, with no better lives, with no destination and no hope. And this is really part of the crisis that we're facing in Haiti, that we're facing as humans of Haitian descent, wherever we are in the world.
On a parlé de, est-ce que c'est même crise que
Uh, I'm. I'd like to ask if it's the same crisis that we're seeing with the assassination of President Jovenel Moïse and the democratic transition. Are we seeing the same crisis when we are talking about the effects of the earthquake and the violation of the human rights of migrants on the border? Is it the same structural crisis? Can we name those? It's the same structural crisis and it has the same source. They have the same sources. If we really analyze how we got to the point where we are, everything is connected. There isn't a problem that Haiti is facing or Haitians abroad that are not connected.
Angeline, qui ça ou ta bail nan réponse?
Angeline, what can you say as an answer?
Merci, Marc. Donc,
Thank you, Mark. As I said
tout à l'heure, gagner
before,
distinction
there is a difference between structural crisis or structural problems that the country is facing and contextual crisis. Now, we cannot we cannot um, say that they are completely parallel because as I explained before, they are always connected and they intercrossed, specifically because the structural problems have never been addressed in the country. Uh, Social inequalities is a structural problem. Corruption is a structural problem, and nowadays, our constitution that has never been correctly applied is also a structural crisis. Our parliament, our House of Representatives is not working at all. The Senate is made up of only 2/3 of its members and cannot really operate at all because they cannot have the number of participants that are required to work. Our judicial system is um, facing issues. Our police institution has issues and is completely destroyed. And so those are structural problems. And as long as we do not address those structural problems, we will not be able to avoid other crises that can be considered as contextual crises, such as, for example, the assassination of President Jovenel Moïse. I could use another example to illustrate that situation also, because there are usually parallel, at least as far as the Haiti situation is concerned. They are always intercrossed and they do not remain parallel. For example, the earthquake that happened on August the 14th is a structural crisis. There isn't an earthquake every day. But after the earthquake happened, since there wasn't any system to allow for prevention, to allow for preparation, since there is no territory organization, since there are uh, really wild construction in the country, no state support, people uh, build anywhere they can find. And so the earthquake happened, and because of all these problems beforehand, uh, before the earthquake, it makes for greater consequences. And this is one aspect. Now, if we look at the response aspect, we see that how long the state took just to get where the earthquake had happened, and with the uh, 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 provincial um, help of the state in the region of Lekai, the state had not been able to get to the region, had not been able to take concrete measures, assist, and give adequate help to the situation. And that is a structural problem, and it creates greater contextual problems. And so, in my opinion, that's the problem. There normally we cannot they cannot remain parallel, the two types of crisis, because structural problems are deep, have not been addressed, and every time there is a crisis, a contextual crisis, or in the case of a disaster, natural disaster, for example, you'll see that it's more the agencies, NGOs, or community organizations, the UN and everybody else who will bring a response and relief, while the state itself still does not have the capability to coordinate um, the relief effort and does not have the capacity to orientate the relief effort. So this is my opinion. There is a difference indeed, but in our case in Haiti, since we are always um, under a crisis, or the structural problems have never been addressed, when we are facing a contextual crisis, they are intercrossed. Okay, let's move on this issue. I think um, you um, I'm sorry.
Elite Haiti ak elite
Is
international.
there a link between the Haitian elite and the international elite? Is there are there only state actors in Haiti that are involved in the structural crisis? Can you give us a little more details about the international elite and the national elite and their role in the crisis? I don't know if Gerlin is still here or if you would like to answer first. Gerlin is there. I think I've talked uh, pretty much now. I think she can speak first. If not, I can keep going. You can go. Okay. Well, I have not made a specific analysis on the role of the elites in our crisis situation. But we can see that there are several factors that um, affect the situation nationally and internationally. And concerning the role of the elites, we see that very often there are many actors at the international level that want to get involved, and we do need their support in the diaspora, since they have a role to play in the destiny of our country. But sometimes, since they're not exposed and have not been in the country for a long time, and since they do not know more a lot of the times the real problems and have not been in touch with the real analysis, their analysis sometimes do not take into account all the dimensions of the problems and do not take into account durable, lasting solutions. As for the national elite, we do not think that they are involved in a collective well-being dynamics. I don't know if you understand what I mean. They very often try to resolve their own issues alone and do not offer solutions as to the future, the collective future of the country. Our economic system, where a majority of the population is poor, we cannot say that we have an elite that is playing its part and that is taking the responsibility that it should. And that's what we see in Haiti. There are some people who think that we do not even have an elite in Haiti, and it might be true, but the small part of our population that we could consider as an elite um, in the development of the country and in the development of the country, they have not taken the role that they should have, and it's really creating a problem. We see particular interests, personal interests that are put forward first. In the last 10 years, uh, we can see that even for the private sector, they have pushed the state and the government to embrace the neoliberal ideology, but really the lowest level compared to regular conditions and requirements of the neoliberal system, which means that they are important in the country only and are not paying taxes at all. The custom taxes have been nearly eliminated, and so the products that they're import are really at a low price on the national market, and that affects our national production and our national products. So eh, in that sense, I think the peasants are being destroyed, the middle class is being destabilized, and there is poverty, joblessness, no national production. So we are facing, if I could say, a system that where the middle class, or what we call the working class, that should be the motor of our economy, has left the country. So today we are facing a situation with this practice that has destabilized the peasant class, that has destabilized the middle class. We have the economic elite, which is the only influent force and is orientating our policies in their interests only. We are really in a critical economic condition, and the country with no institutions in place is really in a situation, in a very critical situation.
Merci. Si avec point système économie qui c'est néolibéral, ou toucher le point qui dit que genre ça m'a connu avec une réalité souterraine qui fait l'État pas capable de répondre de façon qui est supposé répondre. Gerlin, vous avez ajouté un bagage dans la réponse ça?
You were talking about, Kelly, do you want to talk about, you want to add more to Angeline response?
On va parler de, parce que vous avez fait mentionner capacité de l'État pour répondre à cette crise-là. Donc,
You started mentioning about the capacity of the state to respond to the crisis. We're facing a dilemma. We're talking a lot about in Haiti. Despite uprising being strong, we want to have a Haitian solutions, but we can actually have resources that can come from the United from other places. What is the role of the state? What advice can you actually provide? Is Galen here? Or you want to continue? She's switching from her laptop. In the meantime, you can definitely start providing your answer. Well, based on the question you asked, I don't think the Haiti solutions need to include the international solidarity from a technical aspect to a logical aspect. Even countries around the world have some international density that actually allow them to actually advance. In Haiti, we do need a Haitian solution, but despite this, we still need to have an international solidarity from other countries. However, the support, whatever it actually comes from, it is not supposed to interfere with Haiti's sovereignty. So with the cooperation that we're having, we need to actually have some boundaries that can actually go towards the development of the country, that will allow the country to address some of the issues that it's actually facing. We are currently living in a situation that has a lot of interest, economic interest. Even Haiti, that is a very small country, has an important role that can actually play within that particular world stage. We can actually define new partnership. We can also explore more cooperation or partnership with a country such as the United States, who was already integrated in Haiti's issues, or other countries in the Americas, or other continent that can actually contribute to the solution. Regarding the response about natural disaster, the state needs to have a general coordination of the issue. It needs to orient itself based on the mechanism that you put in place, and the different organization that can actually provide reports. With that said, I will go further and say, when we are saying that the state needs to coordinate this particular, the money that was dispersed for the earthquake, the state only received 10%. The local organization only received 1% of the money received that was allocated for the 2010 earthquake, that was allocated to them. And we actually see the result. Look at Port-au-Prince. Even after the earthquake actually had occurred, the response has not been effective and is actually not durable. And if you're doing a really deep analysis, and if you look at the fund that was provided in 2010, it does have an impact on 2010 earthquake, and even what's happening right now in the current one that the one that actually happened recently. There are actually 650,000 people who are directly affected that have needs, that need humanitarian aid. And even now, and we actually have damages that are worth around $1.8 billion, and we definitely don't have any will as of right now. We also have to look at those particular components, and we also have to consider the governmental crisis that Haiti is currently experiencing. And we also have to consider that there are other countries, such as Afghanistan, that also have issues. And also the other parts of the world is actually giving it attention. This is currently the situation. And based on the observation that we made, there are efforts that have been made that the state has done when you compare it to when it happened in 2010. For instance, currently the state was able to provide some direction to the ONG, especially to the structure, to like a government entity called Contextual Application Civil, and even from the national level, or ever from the regional and locally, this particular structure is not working. There is some direction that the state is giving. So to finalize the question based on the role of the state, there are efforts that need to, so they need to centralize the aid. Since 2016, the United Nations, after the Humanity Summit, so they wanted to reform the humanitarian aid system. So we need to provide aid to communities that are affected by natural crisis, so the aid that they respond can be more durable and more effective. If this needs to be done, we need to be able to localize this particular aid, centralize this particular aid. 25% of the international aid that was have been coordinated by organization. We are continuing to see, so this particular space is mostly like international organizations that are actually a part of that space. So you don't really see the involvement of the organization. There is not a lot of funding, that resources that we're not looking, but that actually requires a political will, so they can actually address this particular situation. So this is what I can say in terms of my response. So I wanted to pretty much to talk to you about the humanitarian aid system. This is showing how we should continue to posing this particular kind of question, and the role of the state. Thank you so much. So even though we can have a Haiti solution, there is a need to have like some resources coming from outside. So what are advice that you can actually provide? Thank you so much, Mark. I definitely want to apologize because I was having some technical difficulty. I can definitely say, based on my experience, I've received, especially after the recent earthquake that actually occurred, we didn't see that the state play an important role that they were not really involved, and that pretty much, and they're actually never even bring results. So we have to contact the victims from the earthquake so we can actually work with them directly, because we didn't see the involvement of this, because we didn't see the will of the state. Of course, a lot of the aid that we received came from the international community, but we can also say that the Haitian diaspora actually stood up so they can actually work and provide resources to their brothers and sisters who are in Haiti. When we're talking about USAID, which is one of the organizations that state that they are here to support when things happen during this particular situation. So the question is, what are the sustainable structure they want to establish to support people? So after they put some mechanism to look for people that were, so how can we provide sustainable? So it's not only about an earthquake, so how about an earthquake? So we can see all the life that were being lost, so it doesn't happen in this particular scale. Because for me, I live in California. It is an area that is known to have earthquake, but they put in place some structure that can actually minimize the type of damage that can actually occur when the earthquake actually happened. But if USAID and other organizations who said they want to support Haiti, so they only provide food or what, or gallon of water or bottles of water, or every time there is a crisis, this doesn't really help us. So it pretty much creates a dependency on aid. So this is why I'm saying that I didn't see that the Haitian state put in place a structure to really respond to the needs of the people, because we are supposed to have infrastructures that aims to protect people against earthquake and other natural disasters. We already know that Haiti is prone for it. So what are we doing? What are we doing to build better roads? What are we doing to pretty much recover people? So what are we doing to think about the irrigation so people can have food, so they can actually continue surviving? If we are talking about this, we need to look at all these different angles so we can actually see how we can actually reassure ourselves when something happened, so we don't have to be crying. So we need to really think about this, the structure that the Haitian government is putting in place, so they can actually provide protection, and as well as the other aids that are actually coming in when they provide. So when they provide the food and the bottles of waters, what are they leaving behind? Will they be leaving behind diseases such as cholera? Or are they gonna take responsibility to say that they did? every era has like different issues, but we see that the aid that come pretty much bring the country into the road of dependency, where we always have to always ask. Instead, we need a solution in partnership with people who are saying that they are friends with Haiti, so they can actually provide us what we need and the infrastructure, sustainable infrastructure, so we can construct school, hospital, roads, and strong houses. I'm very happy that you actually finished with the sentence that like, so Haiti's solution, Haiti's based solution.
Okay. Okay. At
What solution, what Haitian solution should be
qui
there
élément détected
to be
là? Donc,
Angélique,
capable
can you
commencer.
start?
Okay. Thank you very much, Jean-Marc. ActionAid is working in Haiti since 1997 with NGOs. So every day in our work, we meet with young men who cannot go to school, pregnant women who cannot get the prenatal care that they need,
to provide
farmers who cannot send their children to school, or adults who cannot be fed.
So the social equality.
So the social organizations have a lot to desire for. These situations have gotten worse in the greater South. After the earthquake, these situations have gotten worse. With regards to what we can do or any solution, the first recommendation I have in that sense is to redefine the politics that we have with a population that is more resilient to the natural disasters. Geraldine has talked about a sustainable infrastructure. Within their people in how they do their construction, it's to have a minimum that would ensure the people's security or safety. So building norms need to be established with respect to anti-seismic norms, so that when we have natural disasters, that people's lives are saved. And we have there are programs, we have emergency programs, and we've seen the women in a leadership position. It is a vulnerable group with regards to these situations when we have an absent government. We do have to strengthen the education system so that when we have emergencies, that children can continue to attend schools. And you see what just happened with this, with the disaster, all the schools have to come to a halt. And if you have their schooling is affected, the school cannot continue to operate. And we have recommended that already, that we need to have an educational system that regardless of what's going on, that children can continue to attend schools. The other recommendation that I have, we need to have certain mechanisms in place that allow for transparency, so that you can ensure that the solutions, the resolutions are of quality, and then that you do have a nexus humanitarian development that allow community, that help community to continue to face these. So the state and the organizations are involved in to develop our capacity in different sectors, and also can respond to humanitarian in the humanitarian sector, and recommendations that are given to strengthen the local organizations. So the humanitarian interventions and then strengthening of the capacity building of this organization, and the state with regards to how the orientation that they're providing, and then they are involved and they can define their needs, and it's not something that is already prefabricated that they offering to them, but it's more of an internal integral solutions. And the last recommendation I have, we have really today in today's age with the issues that we're dealing with, we have to look for solutions that respond to, that address our reality. We see the US has put himself in the country wanting to have an election, and we know that having an election at this juncture will not go through properly. What we want to do so that they can support us, they can give us an accompaniment, but we really need to stay with clear minds, because otherwise we'll be witnessing an extermination of the people. Thank you. Well, Angeline, unfortunately, extermination of the people, I believe it's one of the reasons why we're going through this crisis, because our existence is unacceptable. This extermination of the people is a priority, and unfortunately, and what I would be able to bring is a call to sentiment. It's bringing back a sentiment of belonging to the Haitian people, to the young children growing up, so that they can be reassured, so that they know who they are, so that they know they have the right to dream, they have the right to live, not to only survive, but to live and thrive with in all liberty and pride. And my reaching out to the Haitian government is so that they become more conscious, that they prioritize the Haitian people, so that they prioritize our brothers and sisters, so that they don't just look they don't just save themselves, just leave the search, the quest after visa to the side, so that they can reinsure, so that as a sovereign people, as a sovereign country, as a people, so that we stop putting our heads down in front of everyone. If today the US, Mexico, the Dominican Republic, or our friends Cuba sent more than 40,000 Haitians, it's because they do not look at us with respect. It's because we do not have a government that respects us, that is defending our plight with them. So my call and my suggestion is, how do we go back to a sense of belonging, so that we can uplift our pride, so that we can resolve our issues, and we can tell everyone, we welcome everyone who wants to give us the support that we need, then support that they owe us, in fact, so that we can move forward. And it is without without those foundation, then we lost. If we don't have this understanding, if we don't have this as a priority, then we'll continue to go backward, and we really don't know where we'll stop. And we just witnessed the Toussaint Louverture, Jean-Jacques Dessalines, Grand Toya, who gave life, who put a nation together. We shouldn't be at this juncture walking with our heads down. So we need to put ourselves together so that union can make us stronger. So my call today to Haitians, to my brothers and sisters, is going to from the people at the leadership position all the way to the little street vendor and all the way to the children. And please look at the Dessalinian and read the words and to see how we can move forward. And thank you so very much, Mark, for allowing me to participate here in this monumental meeting. And thank you, Angeline, for your words and a lot of the knowledge that you shared with us. And we continue, and you can call on us over here, and then we can continue because more hands, the load gets lighter with everyone here who says that they want to see a better Haiti. Thank you very much. Thank you, Gerline, avec Angeline, for your the time that you've consecrated for us today, and had you addressed the current situation and how the crises are intermingled with each other. Thank you so much for everything, for all of that, and also for everyone who's listening to you, and everyone who wants to ask question. You see there's a little button at the bottom, the Q&A button. You can click on there. There are two questions there. Someone wants to salute the Haitian Bridge Alliance, the work that they're doing. It's a wonderful work. And also the other two questions with regards to gangs. So I'll read the questions in Creole, and then also I'll collect the question in English. There are a lot of Haitians who are mean, and they refuse to become to, oh gosh, how the children how can the children stop choosing gang? Angeline, if you were a commander-in-chief in Haiti, how would you suspend, how would you stop the cycle of violence going on in the country? This is a very sensitive question and very honest, and we can't hide from these questions. What are the answers that we can offer? Thank you, Mark. Thank you also for the question. Unfortunately, I am not one of the people, the decision maker. I'm just exposed to the situation, and I share from what I've understand. I believe addressing the problem or the violence issue in the country, it's a structural issue. You cannot just say we have gang and then we're gonna remove the gangs. There's the roots of the issues. We have to tackle these issues at the roots. And when we refer to the roots of the problem, when we looked at since the government of Duvalier, the Duvalier regime, the dictatorship of regime, then we gonna that's gonna lead to the middle class is gonna have the social organization. They're gonna have lead to after the departure of the son, they're gonna lead to a democracy, but a democracy that doesn't answer the questions of, doesn't respond to the issues of Haiti. It's a democracy that doesn't allow that we address the issue, and we cannot just look at, we do have a shared responsibility. We cannot think of the issue on one side. There's also the international community involvement in the country. So every government that has taken into office, they do have this rapport with the gang, and they continue. They keep holding their power. They continue to dominate when they use the gang. And unfortunately, they do have dealings with the gang. Don't know if we are to a space where now everyone has lost control, and every social strata has an issue. And to address the violence issue in the country, and we have to first address the social inequity in the country. It's to have access to education. Every Haitian needs to have access to health, and every Haitian needs to be able to eat with respect and dignity so that they can live as a human being. Until we address these inequities, until we address the corruption issue, if we don't strengthen the institutions, we have a police that operate independently, and we have a judicial system that is doing its job, and so that they can put order. So we're gonna continue to live and suffer these situations. They can manipulate you all they want. They cannot play me all they want. It's because already I don't have an education. I don't have a choice. I don't have a job. I grow up finding my mom and dad not working. There isn't any opportunity for the young person, for the youth. So once you're growing up, you are living in violence. So the structural violence, as if you cannot go to school, you cannot eat, you don't have access to health. You have all these issues that need to be addressed so that the violence issues can be resolved on a long-term basis. If you do not address these issues, then they're gonna come up again at the surface. And this is how the violence issue can be addressed in the country. One thing that I can share,
Okay.
these issues of gang and kidnapping, this is something, it's an important practice in the country. This gang and kidnapping issue is an imported practice in the country of Haiti. We don't make guns, we don't make bullets, we don't produce bullets or guns. We don't even produce food in the country. Everything is being imported. We export brain, we export young people, the youth, we export knowledge, we export and we imported criminality, we imported gang, and we imported kidnapping. And we've reached a situation now that people who are outside of the country, when we talk to people in Haiti, and he said the day that that's the day when you have a community of 10 million people, if they eat one day in the morning, they most likely won't eat for the rest of the day. Just like Angeline just mentioned, if the person needs to eat, the person is hungry, if the person is given a gun, this person will take the gun, because feeling hungry is not a sweet thing, it's not easy, because this mentality that's become like a cancer in the country. It's like a cancer in the mind of the young child growing up. It's a cancer for somebody who cannot eat, who cannot go to the hospital, cannot go to school. We continue to import all dishonest practices that they are bringing to us, that they are forcing upon us. How can we get out of that? How can we get out from this situation as a people and as a country?
Bon. Voilà, importé,
It is
c'est
imported.
c'est un vraiment bon
It
façon
is,
pour
it's a good way
exporter
of,
connaissance,
it's a very good way to explain that Haiti is exporting knowledge
capacité, et puis importer
and
situation,
exported mind,
violence
and then
massive,
importing violence and what Angeline,
c'est une expression violence
it's
depuis
and the physical violence, and when you're aware, people are aware that the country is not developing. So the physical violence and the country can offer a, a dignified country. So there we go. This is a very important conversation. It is, it's, it is, say, it's something important that we can, it's a little piece of things that we need to think through so that we can come up with a solution. It's a source of inspiration so that we can deepen furthermore as intellectuals, as scholars, so that we can find our role in a solution. And then it's a way to open up in the other plenary that we will have tomorrow, so that people can will present on literature, history, genre, environment, and etc. Angeline and Galine, and I was very, very happy that I've shared this experience with you. And also you've devoted your time, and I know it wasn't time, and primarily today in Port-au-Prince, and with you risking your life in Haiti. And I really thank you. You had some time to spend with us. And thank the people in the audience. Thank you very much. And so I'll wait for you guys tomorrow for our plenary and Saturday. And I'm continuing, have a great fun, good work, courage, and we continue to be here, nous la period. And thank you, Mark. It was a pleasure for me to share my thoughts, my idea, and a few pieces that could be helpful, that would help us to continue to move forward with how we're managing the issues, the problem, then all the disasters caused by the natural disasters. And thank you, Geraldine, for the work that you do, the Haitian Bridge Alliance is doing. Please continue to struggle, continue to carry the light. And we need the support of all the Haitians, every social strata, and everywhere. And it's really us who can contribute to another Haiti. And thank you to everyone, the interpreters, and all the participants who were present and are participating. And I hope that we can meet again in a different event. Thank you.